so don't say anything.
Audio's going.
The
We don't
audio is
want-
now on.
Watch your language, the audio's going.
Okay, I'd like to bring this meeting to order, please. And this is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice has been posted on the lands. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. All interested parties are invited to be present. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. There are colored forms for this purpose which are available on the back table. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. I'd like to introduce our panel. On my far left is Don Cook. My left is Brian. And I'm Wayne Lockey, the chair. On my far right is Nancy Bizzato, our town clerk. On my right is Holly Wilford, our deputy clerk. Does any member of this panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications to be considered at this hearing?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none either. Are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we've received a request for adjournment for minor variance file A1/2019P, 1 Highway 20 West, to allow the applicant to amend their application to request an additional 2 minor variances. If acceptable to the committee, I would request a motion in this regard, Sindine.
Okay, is there anybody here that has an interest in this application? Would you like to come up and take a seat and give your name and address?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant is the same for both applications,
Okay.
but the minor variance, they're requesting an adjournment on the variance components
Yeah.
to make changes to the application.
Okay.
I feel that's sufficient.
Yeah, if you want to come up and take a seat and give your name and address. And then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the minor variance.
Sure. My name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and our mailing address is 30 Hanover Drive in St. Catharines.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn the minor variance?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman, that we adjourn minor variance A2019P.
You, seconder,
I'll second that.
all in favor? It's adjourned, the minor variance.
Okay.
So we'll go on to the consent and
Committee of Adjustment hearing, Tuesday, January 8th, 2019.
take your seats again.
Application for consent, file B1/2019P, 1502 Pelham Street. The subject parcel, shown as Part 2 on the attached sketch, is an interior portion of the subject property, Parts 1 and 2, lying west of Pelham Street, north of Highway 20, Regional Road 20, known municipally as 1502 Pelham Street, in the town of Pelham. Application is made for a consent to convey a right-of-way in perpetuity over 30.68 meters square of land, Part 2, in favor of the abutting lands at 1 Highway 20 West, Parts 5 and 6, to be used for additional parking stalls. Parts 1 and 2 will retain for continued commercial use. To date, the following comments have been received. Hydro 1, no comments. Building Department, no comments. Public Works, a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for all parcels will be required at site plan control, demonstrating that site drainage neither relies nor negatively impacts neighboring properties, and that all drainage will be contained independently to the Director of Public Works' satisfaction. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed right-of-way conveyance is acceptable and will allow additional parking stalls to be built on land which was otherwise inconveniently configured and did not lend itself to very productive use. The adjacent lands to the west, 1 Highway 20 West, requiring the conveyance, are concurrently subject to a minor variance approval, file A1/2019P, and prospectively subject to a site plan approval for the 3-story mixed-use building. The right-of-way will enable the abutting development to the west to be more adequately serviced with private, off-street parking stalls. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms with provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that the consent known as file B1/2019P be granted. The following conditions are suggested: that the applicant provide the Secretary-Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the use in the issuance of the certificate of consent, and provide the final certificate fee of $380 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant.
Thank you, Polly. Okay, do you have any comments on this application?
Yes, we've just prepared a couple of slides. I felt it was important to understand when we're asking for an easement for additional parking, just to give you a general idea, and I'm aware of that there may be a new committee coming in, so I'm going to be very careful not to seize the committee, but I think it's important to understand what's being proposed and why this parking is required. So as noted, I'm Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants. We're representing Mr. John Vander Weeden, who's the owner of 1 Highway 20. Mr. Chambers is having a seat right now. He owns 1502 Pelham Street, and he's the one that's agreed to provide this easement. You just flip the next slide. Just for general context, I know that we have 2 individuals that are with us in the gallery today. 1 Highway 20, the building has since been demolished, but it's right there. It's just immediately to the west of Keith's Restaurant. It has frontage onto Highway 20, which is a regional road. It also has frontage onto Park Lane, which is currently, a portion of it is owned by Mr. Vander Weeden, and the rest is owned by the town of Pelham. So in terms of what's being proposed on 1 Highway 20, it's a three-story mixed-use building. There's going to be 3 ground floor commercial units and then 6 residential units above, so 3 on each floor above it. There's parking that's been planned behind and then on adjacent property to be secured through easements. So the building's been brought up close to the street, so there's parking provided behind the building. Through the easement we're hoping to secure from Mr. Chambers, that will allow a portion of his lands to be used for parking in perpetuity for this building as part of the required parking. And also we're working with the town of Pelham to use a portion of city lands which are in the immediate vicinity to make up the rest of our parking. So if we can just flip to the next slide. Okay, skip that. And here's a summary of what the site plan is. As noted, we had to defer the minor variance. We inaccurately show the building footprint, so we need to revise a variance with regards to rear yard setback and add a variance with regards to lot coverage. In terms of our parking configuration, you can see the parking spots that are provided on site immediately to the north. Those 4 parking spots, those are on Mr. Chambers' land, and that's the subject of the easement application. So, subject to the minor variances and the site plan approval of 1 Highway 20, that easement would be registered, and those lands would then form part of the required parking to allow us to meet the zoning requirements of the town. So that's why this application has been brought forward. And just to add, while we do have the microphone right now, the issue with the deferral of the minor variance was brought to our attention on Friday afternoon. So we've made every effort to get revised plans to the town so we can get on the next committee meeting. We would just ask at this time, just given our inability to act very quickly on that $200 resubmission fee be waived for Mr. Van der Weeden. And we feel those funds could be appropriated a little bit better in our applications moving forward. We still need to apply for site plan approval and securing a nice development for downtown Font Hill.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on this application? No. Is any of the committee have any questions or comments?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Don?
Mr. Chairman, I found it confusing after reading the planning report exactly what is happening, but I guess as long as Mr. Chambers is agreeable to losing a parking stall in favor of 1 Highway 20, I have no objection, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments from anybody?
Mr. Chairman, my only concern is it would seem that this looking at the site plan that was attached in the planning report, Mr. Van der Weeden has 8 parking stalls on his own site, but he's looking to Mr. Chambers in the town of Pelham to provide him with another 8 parking stalls. I realize that parking in downtown Font Hill, public parking in downtown Font Hill is hard to find these days, and I really don't want to see the loss of the 4 public stalls the town have on Park Lane at the present time, but that is not the subject of this consent. The subject of consent is the perpetual easement from Mr. Chambers to 1 Highway 20, and Mr. Chambers is agreeable. I have no objection, Mr. Chairman.
There's no other comments. I could ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair, that file B1 2019 be approved, the application be approved, subject to the following conditions as recommended by the town. That Secretary Treasurer be provided with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. That the final certification fee of $380 payable to the Treasurer of the Town of Pelham be submitted to the Secretary of Treasury, and all costs associated with fulfilling the conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. It's based on the following reasons. That the applicant is aware through the written correspondence that a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for all the parcels demonstrating that the drainage neither relies, this is important, relies upon nor negatively impacts neighboring properties, and that all drainage will be contained within the respective boundaries of the new parcel to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works or the designate. And will be required at site plan approval when that's done. And number 2, that the application does conform to the policies of the region, of the town of Pelham, its official plan, and of course, the provincial policy statement and compliance with the town's zoning bylaw. Also, no objections have been about this proposal have been received from commenting agencies nor neighboring property owners. And it's rendered having regard to the provisions of section 51, number 24 and 25 of the Planning Act, and that our committee has considered all the written and oral submissions and finds that subject to the conditions of the provisional consent, this application does meet the Planning Act criteria and is consistent with the provincial policy statements and complies with the growth plan, which is an important point, for the Niagara Region's official plan and the town official plan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, excuse me, I would support the applicant's request to waive the rescheduling fee in this instance if you need to ask staff.
Okay, I was going to ask that next question.
I apologize.
Okay, the motion is carried. That's approved. And the next is it up to us to waive that fee or not waive the fee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the committee does have the authority and the jurisdiction to waive the rescheduling fee. The error on the plan wasn't noted until late last week, so I would support we cannot hear the application with those new changes on it, so I would support that the rescheduling fee be waived.
Okay, can I have a motion to waive the fee?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the fee be waived.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all in favor of the fee? No fee. Okay. Is there anything else with this application?
No, the applicant is aware that we will make every effort to ensure that the application gets on for the next available hearing and schedule the hearing panel for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we have minutes to approve.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the September 11th, 2018 minutes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 18th? September? Meeting.
September 18th.
Okay,
I move that we approve the minutes.
okay, Don, you second it?
I wasn't here, but yes, I will second the
Approved. Minutes approved.
minutes approved as prepared.
All in favor? We're all in favor.
The record could show, did you have Lockie and DeMartle at that September meeting?
No. Yeah, there's two of us.
That's what I was wondering.
Then have them as the movers and seconders, not Mr. Cook.
Okay.
Okay. I'll second it then.
Pardon?
I shouldn't really have anything to do with
Like
it.
that, I'm sorry.
Oh, you approved the meeting's
Yes.
adjournment, and I seconded it because Don wasn't here.
I wasn't here.
The minute approval.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what I was wondering. I had a question. Was you there?
I wasn't there, that's why. I did read the minutes and they did make sense to me, so.
Anything else?
If you would like to adjourn?
It would be my next. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
You
We're all
you know
three here.
what, I would,
Is
let,
this off? No. It's not off.
I will second the adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.